Greetings, everyone. This is Jar Citizen Gamer, here always with my bastion of common sense, Lightning Dragon, talking about Star Citizen today.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Chaos.
Incorporated. I really can't call this a roundtable discussion because we don't have enough people to make it round. I really can't call it a panel. We don't have enough of that. We'll just call it a line because between two points is a line. That's all I can really think of. I don't know what to call this. A line discussion. So, of course, PTU was released onto the live, and there was a lot of changes that came in with that. The biggest by far was the combat, or the flight change. From basically, it went from extremely twitchy, which was everything we've had up to 1.3, to more physics based, where even if you fire missiles and things like that, as the weight comes off your ship uh, goes faster, accelerates faster, turns faster. So they really started incorporating weight, mass, and things into it. I don't know how much flight time you've got out there with it, Lightning, but did you like the way that it handles a little bit better? Do you feel it's not quite as twitchy or more responsive with the stick?
Well, I mean, you pretty much played as much as I have. I mean, the only time I've really gone to the Persistent Universe was so that we could do stuff together when it was working. So I've flown the Retaliator. I don't know if I flew the Connie with you or not. I may have flown it a little bit. But I think I flew around for like 2 seconds in the Gladius. And all in all, I love my derping on my words here. um, I'd say it's overall better, unless you're talking about the freelancer, because I watched your video on that, and it's just like sensitive mode, and then it's not sensitive mode, and it's just all over the place. But I mean, you got to give them some slack. That's the newest one they just threw in, so it may have been slightly rushed, and they didn't bug test it as much as the other ships.
Well, you were seeing me do that on the 2.1 PTU, and the large part of the problems I was having there was there's a lot of lag, a lot of frame rate issues. I've done some tweaking to my user config files based on Grey-Headed Gamers web page, and I come up with a custom setting that's really gotten it a lot more stable. Though you still have the weird issues of, like, you try to run up the rear ramp of the freelancer, and you actually run you once you get up top of the ramp, you fall through the base of the ship. So the only thing you can do to get in is you have to run underneath the cockpit and hop up and down until you can get the use function on the cockpit seat, and then suddenly you're sitting in it. It's
Yeah,
really
there's
weird.
some issues. I thought it was Board Gamer that had the user configs.
You're right. It was Board Gamer. I have subscribed to so many channels. The thing is that initially when I was on there, when there was a lot of lag, the freelancer, what they found between 2 and 2.1 is that the freelancer was actually, they assigned it 1/10 of its actual mass.
Oh,
And
jeez.
yeah, that's why it was turning so fast. And they reduced the size of the guns from fours to threes. And I'm very happy about that because I felt that, well, and I'm doing a more in-depth video, and I'm still putting together parts, but I have some of it here, and I can discuss a little bit where I'm seeing a real problem
Yeah, we can
with.
touch on that for our first topic.
Well, yeah, I mean, well, okay, let's look at the freelancers. Let's say in their ship, the Vanguard. Okay, now freelancer is $110 ship, and it's a cargo ship, and the Vanguard is a $250 heavy fighter. Now, the freelancer is listed as a weight class of 26,000 kilograms. The Vanguard is listed as 45,000 kilograms. Both these ships are optimally operated by two people. The freelancer has two TR5 engines, while the Vanguard has two TR4s. So right there, you've got a ship
It,
that's
it's heavier with less thrust.
right. And the Freelancer is listed as having 8 TR2 thrusters, where the Vanguard sports 12 TR2s, which means that even with 50% more thrusters at twice the weight, the Vanguard would turn slower.
Which,
So,
if it was a heavily armored ship, you could kind of justify the weight difference, but not double. That's massive.
well, that's the thing. It's a fighter, a heavy fighter, mind you, but a fighter that can be outmaneuvered and outgunned by by
Glorified transport.
yeah. And I'm looking at this, and I'm like, and here's the thing too: the Freelancers' front guns are gimbaled. The Vanguards are not, except that one turret they have underneath, that one Gatling gun, which I think they need
Oh,
to.
on the little tiny
Oh,
nub that would
they
probably
need to
shatter.
change that whole system. We'll get back into that. That would just fall off the first turn. That their gimbal system needs to either be fixed gimbal points, like built for it with no
Yeah, kind of like with
negatives.
the Freelancer, there's a dedicated like actual section of the ship
Exactly.
for the gimbaling.
Exactly. Not these little hockey pucks like, oh, here's something that's the size of my palm. It's going to hold a 5-ton weapon on it. That's just not going to happen. I don't care what kind of tech you're looking at. That's that would just snap off. But anyway, so you've got this situation where a ship that's basically more than twice the cost of the previous ship. Oh yeah, and the freelancer should carry the same size. Actually, I think the freelancer carries the same amount, same size and amounts of missiles too. So basically, the freelancer is looking like a better ship. Now, obviously, stats are in flux, and things change, but it goes to the idea that in some regards, when outside of fighters, at least the ones that we've had initially in Arena Commander, that CIG really hasn't put a lot of thought into the balance that goes between these other ships. Not yet, anyways. And I'm hoping that we move into the persistent universe, they can explore this a bit more and kind of bring this in, because it's really kind of like, why would the military even have a vanguard? They would just send out fleets of freelancers.
Yeah, and apparently it's cheaper to produce
Yeah,
because it's
exactly.
cheaper for the person to buy it. But I mean, you're talking about gimbals, and I'll touch on that for a second, then I'll go
No,
into my
absolutely.
that point I want to make here. Is I would agree that gimbals should just flat out not be on something unless it's a dedicated hard point. You look at the Vanguard, right? It's a heavy fighter slash bomber, and it has an actual turret for it, and that's fine. And the part on the front, that should really be changed more to like the A10 style, where they built the front of the ship around this gun for its hitting power. So you can come in there and you have like energy weapons on the wings or whatever, and you can fire those to rip down the shields, and then you had the big gun or missiles to take out even bigger ships. But I think what they really do or need to do is they need to consolidate where the sizes are. You have like size 1, size 2, blah blah blah. They need to get a balance between damage, power, and energy, and then regulate which ships actually get these. Obviously, I don't think any fighter, unless it's a large, heavy fighter, should have any type of gimbal or turrets. The Vanguard being the exception here because it's got the turret on it. But I mean,
Gladiator and Super Hornet.
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, those are definitely things. I mean, you look at the Super Hornet and even the Hornet in general, it's a dedicated section of the ship, regardless how ugly the ship is, in my opinion. But it's a dedicated area for that gimbaline turret device.
Right.
And you have this power creep, I guess. I don't know what other term to use.
I'm
Where
calling
you
it the
have
arms race to the bottom, because
arms race. Okay,
arms race to
but I
the
mean,
bottom.
yeah, so you have all these different wild, damages, and some guns do better here or there, but they should really kind of scale it back. So you have light fighters and you have medium fighters, and these ships can only have this size
I
or
agree.
power rating of gun.
I
And then you
absolutely
move
agree.
up to like heavy fighters and then like light transport because the power differences are going to be, the larger the ship, the bigger power plant you can put in it. So let's say, just for example, a light ship, like a light fighter or a medium fighter, that cannot have larger than size 2 weaponry. What that would mean then is you could have like size 1 guns on a fixed mount, like the Freelancer or the Hornet, where they're on an actual gimbaling system that's an actual section of the ship, which would make it a little bit larger and slow it down, but you have the added advantage of being able to shoot left or right or even behind you. And I think that's where the biggest problem is coming for the arms race you're talking about is the the over the top sizes, and there's no real balance between the ships. I mean, you look at the Gladius and the Gladiator, and what's another one of the small ships? M50 maybe, or even
M50 be a
even
good one.
the 300 series.
Right.
Those ships all compare relatively good to themselves. Then you look at the Hornet, and the Hornet has a lot of
Oh,
guns
the Hornet's
for.
just it's just the whole leaderboard is pretty much just a Hornet.
Yeah, and then you have the Super Hornet, which has even not the Super Hornet, but yeah, the Super Hornet has even more guns. That's way too many guns. Because then if you had, let's put it in realistic like world, okay? So let's say we'll go back a couple years because I don't know a lot of the new airplanes, but let's say you have an F-16, and the F-16 is a really good airplane. Oh, my monitor's just turned off. So you have the F-16, which is a really good airplane. It's got 2 guns and missiles, and then everybody pretty much uses it. They base it off of that. Then someone comes out and they make an F-22 Raptor, and it's got 50 machine guns and 500 missiles. I'm just making numbers up. So
Where'd
everyone's
the
going to look
pilot
at
sit?
that. Well, yeah, but I mean, everyone's going to look at that and go, "Wow, this is the future of combat." So everyone would make an airplane that's got similar arms because it's an arms race
Right.
in the real sense of the world. So you wouldn't have one ship that is just thousands of light years better and superior in every single way, and no one else really stepping up to take the challenge.
And that goes to what I was kind of bring up as well, is that the problem is that okay, besides the weapons thing, is that the value of the ship is not, in my opinion, should not be a straight line progression. Like a, okay, this ship's 60, this ship's 120, so this ship's twice as good. That's not how it works in the real life. That's not how it works with automobiles. Not how it works with planes. Basically, it should be a curve. You may be twice as much, but it might only be like 50% better. It's not going to be 100% better. It's going to be 50% better or something, because there's a curve. There's a curve at a certain point when you start spending money. Well, anyone here has bought a computer knows that at a certain point when you start throwing more money, more, and I'm guilty of this as well. But as the more and more money you throw into it, eventually gets to a point you hit diminishing returns. And so with technology and whatnot, that basically your ship that's like say $150 and a ship that's $165, the difference is rather negligible between the two. And it's at that point in time, it's mostly going to come down to role and the pilot skill that's going to dictate. Um, that $15 may have like a 2% performance difference at that level. And it goes along the lines too. And I agree with what you were just saying with the weapons. I think they need to lay out, like for example, light fighters need to have at least two ones and are allowed a maximum one size two. For example, non-fighters, like for example, an Aurora can only equip size ones. You can like ships that are dedicated for combat would be like they can carry, for example, like the freelancer, like they changed it to four fours to four threes, which I agree with, and they're on dedicated gimbal mounts, um, because the fours were literally one-shotting every fighter in front of it. It was just boom, and it was just gone. And in the threes are nowhere near that efficient, which is, I think, it's more balanced. But then you move to like the medium fighters, and I think they should be able to equip, a lot of twos and maybe a couple threes, okay, at most. And then you move into the heavy fighters, which should be able to equip um, uh, like more twos and more threes, or have like a little bit more, or they can follow the same layout as a medium fighter, just they just carry more armor,
Or
and
they
they
can
can.
have a dedicated gun that the ship is physically built around in the
Right,
case of
like
like the
the nose
Vanguard.
cannon, right, which is which would size four gimbal, size five fixed. In that case, they have the four size two nose cannons, guns, and then they have the one size five. And what the rest of it comes down to, the turret, the armor, and the missile loadouts, whatnots in the ship. But they need to put a limitation, because um, as talking about the arms race to the bottom, as they keep putting out more and more ships, I've noticed that gun sizes and turret sizes and class 4 automated turrets, the guns are getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we have these beautiful ship models. We have this whole idea of concept of location damage and part damage and disabling enemy ships or capturing. Everything is going to die in a single hit. It's going to be pointless to have
Yeah, it's not
any.
going to matter.
It's like, I've got the prettiest damage system you've ever seen, but all you ever see is an explosion. So it's one of those things that
Well,
they.
in the early case, the 300 series, your engine gets blown off or the
Oh,
cockpit gets blown off. Like one missile. Your shields are down, one missile.
yeah. Well, missiles suck right now. Actually, you could fire.
Oh, thank God.
Well,
Missiles were over the top
they
earlier.
changed it to maximum two lock, which I do agree with. Unless, of course, I think if you have a ship that's dedicated, like has example, Hornet Tracker, or some other ship that's got a sensor package that would allow more locks. I think two is the most that you should allow. But right now, missiles, you could practically park your ship and the missile will miss you. That's pretty horrible. They need it, but that's all part of the balancing. It's still to come. But to me, one when you've got all these balance issues with the ships, they need to lay out, like they're trying to lay out a flight model plan. They need to lay out a loadout plan. It's good that they've 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 set up the definitions of what's the sizes of all the weapons of different classes, so that everything fits correctly when they create the ship pipeline. But now we've got to dictate what fits on a ship. And what I've noticed as well when I'm flying and shooting is that energy is never really as much as an issue as heat on these weapons, and energy should be the bigger concern than heat. You should at 33%, like all your systems at 33%, you should be running out of energy faster than you're building up heat. The heat should only be an issue if you have like weapon power set to like 75% of your ship, and you just keep firing and firing and firing and firing. To me, it seems like there's a lot of things that they need to do to, or like you're constantly thrusting. If you have your engines up or whatnot, if you're boosting harder, flying harder, your engines can get overheated if you push too hard, like
which
war
they
engine
don't
power.
currently, do they?
But like, yeah, well, no, they don't. And then, like, you got like, war engine power and World War II things. You could crank, you could do the 105, 110%
Yeah.
overboost.
What is it? The wet power,
Yeah, wet.
emergency wartime emergency power.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, uh, you could apply that and basically have those advantages and disadvantages into setting power levels a certain way. This is the kind of depth that they need to add in. But to make any of this matter, the whole system has to slow down so you're not getting killed in like a half a second, and and flight has to match. Now there's been a lot of, and when I say a lot of screaming, it's mostly by the group Renegade Squadron, and they're big on the leaderboards. I don't care that they always try to legitimize, like, hey, we run leaderboards more than everyone else, so our things matter more than you. I've got 35
My
years of
my
flight.
box I'm standing on is bigger than everybody else's, therefore it's better.
Exactly. But the thing is that I've got 35 years of flight game experience. I don't need to. I've eaten pizzas for 35 years of my life. I don't need to eat. I don't need to be a chef to tell you that the pizza that you've just made is crap, or it's what's wrong with it. I have enough experience to tell you where the problems are. And they always say, "Oh, that's because you're comparing it to atmospheric." Well, no, I've done space as well. But since you want to bring atmospheric into it, um,
There's even more right there.
well, there's that's coming up on the what when they revealed fact that we're going to have planets that they're procedurally generated. If they add atmosphere, those ships with wings, do you think that atmospheric model is going to come in? That kind of dynamic will come in very handy. To me, it seems that you want to align your controls and everything to the atmospheric flight model, not in the sense of that, not that it handles in space like it does in atmosphere. Obviously, there'd be differences, but
You'd
you
want
want
it as close
to
to kind
roll
of
and
both
pitch. You
systems.
want roll and pitch is what you want. It's a unification. You don't, if you're dogfighting somebody that goes in and out of the atmosphere. Okay, every time you go into the atmosphere or leave the atmosphere, do you want to try to completely redo how your control scheme works? Uh, Basically, the ships would be based around, and the reason that it's not the roll and pitch isn't just because of um, of the fact that it's an atmospheric model. It's because it's a model that actually works best for G forces related to how it affects the human body. Right now, when I read a lot of these forum posts, especially from like Renegade Squadron, talking about the strafe battle, there shouldn't be strafe battles. Let's just put that out there. There shouldn't be strafe battles. Lateral is one of the worst ways that you can possibly dogfight as far as relationship to G forces on the human body. Even if Kalix says that they're doubling the G forces out there, and it doesn't matter. It's still one of the worst options you could have, and it can be downright fatal. And anytime you say strafe battle, I think FPS. I mean, that's what you
Yeah,
do.
circle strafe.
Circle strafe. That's what they want. They want circle strafe. And
Then
of
they're
course,
playing the wrong game, honestly.
and that's the thing is that when 2.0 came out, okay, we've dealt with the 1 point whatever until 2.0 came out, and it's been Twitch, 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 and the day it came out, they all changed their names to flight model now sucks or something like that. A bunch of children. I'm sorry. And if any of you guys are listening, Renegade Squadron, you're a bunch of fucking children. Okay? You didn't even give the developers the weekend to look at the feedback. You didn't even give them the Christmas holiday. You didn't give them time with their family. We've been looking at the same thing for over a year, and you didn't even give them 24 hours to go ahead and read feedback. That's just immature. Okay. Now, can the model be tweaked and will it be tweaked? Sure, absolutely. They're right now. There's clearly bugs with certain ships and ships aren't handling the way they're supposed to. But grow up, because when it comes down to it, they need to get time to process the feedback and program fixes.
And
Okay.
there's another thing that's not really in the game either, is math on certain ships is not correct. Armor
Right. Oh,
hasn't
the
been
Hornet.
implemented yet.
Oh,
There's still so much more depth to the combat system
yeah.
because we're still in alpha testing. This
Well,
is the alpha test for the persistent universe, the
and the
baby
Hornet's
PTU.
bugged right now. the
Oh,
Hornet spot.
goody.
Every time you knock off a part, the Hornet gets faster and faster and faster. The Hornet basically turned into like the Flash at a given point in time. You're just flying around. It's ridiculous, but it's all about metagaming, and this goes along lines of a couple things. Like one of the big problems is, and it's not really a problem per se, but I don't like the concept of monoboating because to me, there's no point. I mean, you always end up with if you end up with a game where everyone's running around basically with the same weapon strapped on everything, you've got a problem. I mean, and I'm going to use Elite
Clearly,
Dangerous
that
here.
weapon is overpowered or
Well,
performing wrong.
if it's overpowered, performing wrong, or even if someone comes, the point is that there should be a reason for the variety out there. There should be a conscious choice between weapon A and weapon B and what it brings to the table for combat. Now I'm going to bring Elite Dangerous in this mix now before anyone cries out there in whatever land. I'm not talking about the combat being exactly like Elite Dangerous. Though they did actually write out exactly how they want to combat and they went after it and they did it. The thing you have to understand about Elite Dangerous is most of their ships are bigger than a Connie after you get out of the fighters, which are also way bigger than the fighters. Like their base fighters are probably bigger than the Vanguard, and their ships after that are bigger than Connie's. And some of them are like they're bigger
The,
than
your standard Sidewinder, you're looking at more like a Retaliator or something,
yeah
or bigger.
yeah. I mean your Anaconda is bigger than an 890 jump. Obviously these ships are going to be slower on turning, and this is the model you're looking at. So put the bias aside and look at the hard information of what they've done here. When I have a ship and I load it out, I choose between ballistics. I choose between energy weapons, different types of energy weapons. It may depend upon how much the heat that the weapon puts out. It may depend on, maybe I want to put like one really strong energy weapon and a bunch of physical weapons because once the shields are down, physical do more damage, and that goes back to the problem the Star Citizen has. See, we got this 20% shield um, penetration on ballistics, which I think is stupid. It should be like, oh, ballistics do near nothing to shields, like 20% damage to shields, and energy weapons do 100% damage to shields, and energy weapons do 20% damage to hull, and ballistics do 100% damage to hull, or
Which is
some.
something that you and I talked about before.
Right, and I think that and you can have variances there. I mean, obviously you can have different ammo loadouts. Like, oh, this ballistic ammo works well against shields or something. But you can have
Yeah,
different
EM
things.
shield or EM
Yeah,
bullets or whatever. Maybe it's a variant of that weapon that
right.
loads that type of shell, so it's a bit more expensive to buy that. But if you have trouble with shields and you have like a Gatling gun, you can just fire that because it's going to help rip down the shields regardless of any other weapons you have, and then still have that bonus damage. So
Right.
if you look at damage as a value, let's say the standard damage of any Gatling weapon is 10, and the bullets per minute or your whatever your fire rate is depending on like your size. The bigger the size, the more barrels, the more rounds you can get out. So if you're looking at a regular number, it does 10 damage. Well, should it do 10 damage to shields? Well, maybe. In my opinion, which I think is what you said, is you look at your base value and then what it's hitting. It divides it out. So if you have a physical weapon that hits shields, it should only do like 20% of its normal damage. So in this case, it would do like 2 damage. So
Right.
your physical weapons are not really going to be getting through the shields because the shields are designed to stop physical particles. That's why shields are a thing even in science fiction and in reality. Now, shields don't exist in reality, but it has been stated multiple times that to go on these very, very long range journeys or very fast journeys, you need some type of shield or energy field around you to block the micrometeorites and the dust particles when you're traveling at these near light speeds, because a small pebble, like you pick up a grain of sand, and if you're going 1/5 the speed of light, that grain of sand would rip right through almost any material and cause a hull breach and depressurize your whole ship. So shields should be very, very good at dispersing physical items. And then you look at energy. Well, energy, maybe shield shouldn't be as good with because that's just kind of background stuff, and that's where your hull comes in. And your hull can be customized a bit in this regard, so you can have something that's just really good at resisting physicals. So your ship is just don't even bother firing bullets at it, and that's a customization aspect. But if you go with, okay, so projectiles don't do good against shields, So does that mean they do bad against armor? Well, maybe not basic armor. So if you have basic armor, projectile weapons would do 20% more damage. So you're looking at like 12 damage. It's not a whole lot of an increase, but it's something. So projectile weapons would have their use, and energy weapons would have their use if you apply the same system. So energy weapons would do whatever.
Exactly, and this would also force like it would change the dynamics of combat. Now, let's say like I've got two of the Gatlings on there, and I've taken down the shields. I've been doing and I've been through a lot of battle, and I'm out of ammo now. Okay, either through careless firing or extended fight. I'm out of ammo. Now I still got one more guy to deal with. That changes the way that I have to approach things because once I get his shields down, I'm just going to be plinking at him. So I'm going to have to be really, really defensive in how I fly because I can't be as offensive as effective, you know. And I can't sit there. I can't toe to toe the guy, so to speak, because if he's still got ammo, like physical ammo, if my shields go down, he'll rip me to pieces. So it's a matter of like you have to have but you need to have like a conscious choice and a reason for choosing A and choosing B, and there needs to be a reason to mix and match your loadouts because and that includes all the way down to what your ship is equipped with, like you just said, armor or the type of shield that's on there. But right now, the way it is that it's pretty much mostly. The shields go down, and then you just start taking damage pretty much equally across the board, and that's a major problem. And as you said, armor's not implemented yet and whatnot, and that's right. Right now, all the ships are basically hit point stats, and the Super Hornet gets something like 10,000. Most other ships get like 3 to 5,000, which is just adds another big problem on top of the big 6 gun mono boating that they're doing. So it doesn't impress me, and I look at it, all I'm seeing is a lot of meta building and basically meta building strafe FPS combat. And but with 2.0's combat, that strafing isn't really as prevalent anymore. In fact, there's been a lot of complaints. Oh, I can't do this or that. I can't. Well, yeah, good because they'll add more. It should be more about the main thrust of the main engine. Uh, and in fact, a lot of things about dogfighting and you've done dogfighting with me in a lot of different games. But is your how you manipulate the energy. Like if you're coming in on someone too fast, and you're gonna shoot past them. You're gonna have to like extend that length of line between point A and point B by pulling a maneuver, whether you come up or corkscrew or whatever it takes to get that speed down so that you don't shoot past them. And of course, they can counter that by trying to do their own maneuvers and show you that you still so it basically turns into a zigzag, and that's the essence of dogfighting. But right now with the reverse thrusters, like pretty much almost to an extent slowing down. I think they slow down way too fast. If reverse thrusters didn't slow down as fast, you'd be sitting in more of this area of an actual dogfight where people would have to change the line of approach to burn that energy. And it would create a more of a dynamic combat scenario than what we have right now. Right now, it's just it's for the most part, it feels like your main engine well, at least 1.3, it felt like your main engine was superfluous. It was pointless. Your thrusters were just as effective, and I'm hoping to see that in the 2.0 model that we can continue down this line of actual dogfights as opposed to FPS circle matches because the game needs to be deeper than that. It really does.
And the dogfighting, I mean, when you say that, the first thing I think of is I think of World War II combat with like the S
Right.
maneuvers and stuff.
Well, that's what they
But
said the game
that
was. They
same,
wanted. They wanted World War II in space. That was the
yeah,
pitch.
but the same kind of maneuvers can be done in space. It's
Right.
just space is it's a different animal. I mean, I've played a lot of Kerbal. I played a lot of Space Engineers. Now, Kerbal is probably a little bit more realistic than Space Engineers, but both games simulate space very well. I mean, Kerbal's designed to simulate space, so it better do it well. But you look at in Kerbal, your thrusters, they're like at best they're like 1 Newton of force, and your main
Right.
engines they start at around 50 to 120 are the low end ones, the small ends. So you're looking at 120% more power out of your main engine versus your thrusters.
Exactly.
So if you factored in, well, let's say we want a big main engine, but we don't want to have nothing in the front because if you had 120 newtons of thrust forward and like 2 to 4
You take forever to
for
stop.
reverse, yeah, it'd take you forever to stop. Now in a spaceship, you just you just flip the ship around and you fire the main engine.
And that should be a
Well,
factor too. That's just like with the
yeah,
decoupled. I mean,
I mean, that's something they can apply. But
right,
there's another thing they could do. They could make smaller, more efficient engines for reverse. So
hmm
let's say you have like a 10 Newton thruster, but it's only fixed forward or only fixed left. But then you have to factor in the G forces applied.
right.
And I've mentioned this before. I don't know if I've mentioned it in your videos or in any of my videos, but I really think they need to really look at a thrust to weight ratio system, like in real spaceships. And they can also kind of soft do it by the amount
Well,
of G forces applied, which I think they've done to a
they
certain degree.
they have to. They did actually look at it to a certain degree in the Hull series. Like the Hull, you know how they have those dedicated reverse thrusters on the Hull series. They're actually engines pointing backwards along the sides of the cockpit.
Yeah.
And that's probably the only ship I've seen them actually really. Well, there's also, I guess, the Vanguard and the Saber. They said they have dedicated reverse.
I
And
mean,
you see them.
that's what, four ships,
Right,
five ships out of 20 or something.
right. And so, I mean, this is where, well, that's what I'm talking about. The first ship Itis I'd mentioned a while
Hmm.
ago, like the Hornet, is if these new things come in, like the reverse, the ships like the Hornet, whatnot, are actually going to be at a disadvantage because they're going to be, well, they won't be able to slow down as fast. It won't be this or that, and that's, I guess that's why they want to keep the strafing battles in, but I get, it comes down to they need to they need to come up be more consistent with like, hey, ships between this and this weight are gonna need this size thrusters and blah 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 blah, and they're gonna to have this on it, and it's. I still see more ship reworks coming down the pike, and especially for the older ships. Not so much for some of the newer ships, but I see that they have basically, uh, since they haven't fully thought everything out. And this is the spooky thing too, because we're just a couple of days away from 2016, and that's where Squadron 42 is supposed to launch. And I mean, let's just say because to fulfill their promise, they have to release it in December of 2016. And they didn't give a date; they said 2016. That means they've got from today until a year from now, pretty much.
A year and like what, 5 days is the
Year,
time?
well,
No,
you're
a
you're in
year and
two
two
days.
days at the
Yeah,
time of
so
recording.
so yeah, exactly. So they've got to nail down this flight model and how the ships are gonna. So that sounds like a lot of time, but it really isn't because every change you make is
Go
going to
back and
cost.
test
Exactly,
time.
exactly. So this needs to be their priority from this point on. Controls make or break a game, hands down. You can. I played some games that could have been just fantastic, but the controls and this is a goofy one. But there was an old. I remember when I was living in Japan, I picked up I saw a fighter game for the PlayStation. I think it was PlayStation One. It was this Ranma one half kind of. It was like kind of like Tekken to a degree combat game. It was fun. The power moves were great, but the problem was every time you pressed a button, it was a half-second delay. Everything you did had a half-second delay, and it made the game play like crap. But if they would just had pressed the button and it happens at that moment, the game would have been just spot on awesome. But it came down to controls making that game garbage. And I could give other examples as well, but it's not just fighting games; it's just driving games. All of them. Who'd want to play a driving game and you start turning the wheel, and your wheels don't start turning for like a second and a half? I'm trying to figure
Yeah,
that one
this
out.
isn't Ender's Game. We don't need a time delay on our actions.
Yeah, yeah. So it's. But I think this comes back to talking about the delay and back controls because what they did in 1.3 is that they made look ahead mode as the default for even the mouse. I thought a lot of people thought this was going to be a good sign as they're moving IM to the back. But when 2.0 came out, they brought out and they're calling it look ahead mode, but it's IM. It's IM for the stick. It's
It's
IM for the
super
stick.
IM mode.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible, and they keep having this obsession with IM, and it is absolutely just garbage. And here's a couple things. First of all, when I'm flying with it, it sticks on a side. I mean, or I'll be turning, say, hard to the left and firing, and I turn to the right, and my guns are still pointed to the left. And they can't. This is an old problem they've had. They still haven't got. So here I am flying right, trying to shoot this guy. I'm on my guns are pointing to the left. That's just awesome. Track IR doesn't work, so I can't use that. So the only option I have is to fix my weapons, and then of course I'm stuck because I can't change up my loadouts. I'm stuck with basically -1 size weapons that are fixed forward. That you know
And
it
of course, you have the floaty. This is the direction where you're
Yeah.
pointing, and you don't have the precision that you would expect from a joystick game.
Well,
I
it's
mean,
better now, but it still has
well,
ways to
but I
go.
mean, you look at War Thunder. War
Yeah.
Thunder may not be the best game ever, but it
No.
has an amazing flight mechanic. The flight engine, it's good, and it's better and better when you get into the realistic mode and
Right.
and sim
And
mode.
sim mode, and then once you get in there, I mean, it's day and night of a game when you move from arcade to sim,
Yeah.
and sim is a lot more challenging. I love it. We had a lot of fun that one day. I was trying to chase you down with your stupid, your stupid.
My A-20, it's an attack plane.
I
It's
just
got 500-pound bombs and 50 calibers in the nose, and basically my plane had so much power I could just throttle all the way forward and just fly around in a circle. And what plane were you flying? Like a
uh
Yak or something?
yeah, something like that. All I know is
Something Russian.
my
And you
my
just
plane
didn't
was
have the
falling out of the
power.
air, trying to keep the slow speed and turn inside of you. I was like, this is stupid, and I'm just like, I try to get out in the distance, and when I pull away, then you come after me. So it
Yeah.
was like it was playing to a plane's, it was playing to your strength, and it was kind of cool to see a big plane like that, because it has a big wingspan, big engine, it can fly slow, and so it was kind of funny that basically the only way
And
I
I
could
was pushing the engines to their absolute limit. When you'd
yeah,
pull back, I didn't have to push them as hard,
yeah,
and it gave me the time. If you could have kept me in that circly circle and not fallen out of the sky, eventually I would have overheated my engine. Something that
yeah.
doesn't happen in
Well, that's the
Star
difference between
Citizen.
the Russian planes, though, in sim versus arcade mode. In arcade mode, they can do anything. But I used to play a lot of IL-2 Sturmovik, and I flew a lot of those Russian planes. And the way that it was modeling in the arcade was actually a lot more accurate. Those planes they don't have the power to maintain it. They're turn fighters that can't maintain a turn, which is weird. That's why you have to. That's why you have to. That's why they like when they have
They
clip
were
those.
underpowered, as most of it.
Yeah, most of it. So yeah, but aside from that, but the point is that so they've got good integrations. A lot of games out there. IL-2, of course, I mentioned, that has good stick integration. Diaspora, the original Wing Commanders. Here's the thing too. Wing Commander 3 and 4, if I remember right, had gimbal chips that were automatically gimbaled. Okay, so I think that the best ship in the game had automatic tracking weapons, and of course I brought up the fact that I've suggested two different control schemes that one of them has been mentioned by Calyx as the sensor tracking gimbals that would basically creates the automation, but puts it in the way that there's measures and countermeasures, and there's skill involved, and there's environmental factors and fleet factors
And,
and all
and they
that.
even mentioned that it would also help fix some of the AI targeting problems you've
Right,
been having.
right. They actually, Calyx was actually happy about it because dealing with the class 4 automated turrets, and at the very least, you could probably see that system like that come in on those turrets. So if I was able to contribute the game in any way like that, that's great. I'm happy about that. But the problem is that once again, dealing with IM is that, first of all, look ahead mode worked equally well for everybody. It should have just been that. IM is a reverse virtual stick on and with a two-dimensional
It's War Thunder
aiming
arcade
layer.
mode.
Yeah, it's basically War Thunder arcade mode, and if you can open a folder on your desktop, you can shoot a target. It's really while you are flying your vehicle, flying becomes secondary. And anyone who's played War Thunder, play the arcade mode. It's a free game. Download it, play it for 5 minutes. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Flying becomes a secondary notion to aiming, and it should never be that. And a lot of people like to fight and change terms, saying that if you have fixed guns, you make the flight is aim centric. It's like, no, it's flight centric because you're trying to.
It's funny that
But
we bring up the War Thunder arcade mode, because War Thunder arcade mode actually takes more skill,
yeah, it
because you
does.
have to worry about your altitude and speed, where in space you don't. So
Right.
in essence, this is like double arcade mode in simplicity.
That's true, and also it's weird because it's also worse in DCS sometimes as complexity because you've got all these buttons and combinations and flight
And
modes and things you can
user-looking
flip back and
menus.
forth. Yes, and the menu systems, and it's complex in the wrong areas, and it's oversimplified in the wrong areas. It's like if you could flip them around, I think you'd be kind of where you need to be. It's like unnecessary complex in the menus, unnecessary complex in all the the weird little things, turning this on and this turning this off, and it's one of those things that you know. And I'm not trying to be overly critical, but having all these years of experience, I see these problems, and it's just like, and because the one guy that they had that was working on the flight, which worked on DCS, went to go work for Blizzard, And now they keep hiring people who are like, what's your last name? I did Battlefield 4. Well, oh gosh, Battlefield.
We
That's
don't need more FPS experts.
yes, please no more FPS guys. Let's have a new stretch goal. $105 million. Give $1 million to a guy that actually can program flight model. There,
Yeah,
that's a
someone
stretch
that
goal.
worked on original X-wing and Tie Fighter or something. Bring one of those guys out of retirement because that was still a good game.
It's still a good game, and that's the thing is that so the whole thing is like when Renegade Squadron talking about IM is balanced because at the top it's equal. That's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard because what they're saying is that for 99% of the player base there's a massive difference between IM and fixed, and for the remaining 1% it's balanced. Like it's like you've got this pyramid and at the very top where the two lines touch it's balanced, so the whole thing is balanced,
Except for the
and
entire bottom
except for
half.
everything down below, which the disparity gets
Those,
wider and
those
wider and
don't
wider.
matter. Don't look at those people. They're ants. They don't deserve your attention.
Exactly.
You are the 1%.
See, it should be the line should be pretty close all the way from basic to advanced, and when you have a gap like that, it just isn't going to work. Okay, it's just not. It's going to make everyone swap over or be punished for their controller choice. And this is the point. This doesn't even factor in ships like the Freelancer or the Connie or the Orion or the
Idris.
anything larger than a fighter that's going to be required to use these gimbal weapons to be effective because they can't run around with fixed because the ships don't turn fast enough. So their perspective is based on this little dogfighting circles, 8x8 box that they like to play around with, and the game is so much larger than that. So then you go ahead and add in the fact that wow, I want to fly my not Retaliator, but say Redeemer. Okay, the next great starship, right? It's got a lot of gimbal weapons on it. Well, so I have to put my stick aside and grab the mouse to be able to use it effectively? I mean, I'm sorry, but the idea of controller agnosticism is that we can all choose the controllers that we like and play with it, and that's done with look ahead or comfortable with, and it's done with look ahead mode, and it's done with that would work or some sort of automation or and it's comes down to the line that the mouse does virtual stick just as well as a stick, and it should be doing a virtual stick. Because hey, look down your cockpit. What do you see? Do I see a mouse or do I see a stick? I mean, every time you look down, it's a stick or it's a yoke. What the controller should be doing is emulating the control you see. Like why mice are very, in my opinion, very appropriate for shooting like FPS is that basically the mouse is representing um, that you are
Barrel end of your gun or something.
right. That basically, yeah, you're pointing at something. It's a pointing device. That's what it is. It's the aiming layer. The same thing we have in Arena Commander stuff now. It's just the aiming layer, and so that's fine. And so for the for the flight mechanics, it needs to represent the flight layer. And the two things should not be stacked on top of each other because they've got this stick they're trying to sell, this whole Cytec stick line, and I think it's funny because, as someone pointed out, if you're putting these little mouse tracker balls on the
I wish they had a no trackball option for that little survey they did.
oh, I know that was completely a biased poll, but if that's true, then I should be able to just use a trackball on that stick and not actually move the stick and do everything the mouse can do. Just have some, but basically the stick is just to hold buttons. So what's the point? What is I mean? So maybe they should release a Star Citizen mouse that has the mouse, the virtual stick, and a trackball on the side to run the gimbals.
No, it should have a tiny joystick on top of the mouse.
A thumbstick or something.
Thumbstick, there you go.
But the point is that look, one axis or one control or one type of device, one type of control. Guns control with this, ship control with this. This isn't hard. You can't balance something because I've got this thing does 2 and this thing does 1 and say that's equal. I mean, 2 does not equal 1. Unless
you're in chemistry, and that's completely different.
Unless you went to public school, which I guess a lot of people did, you could get past this. 2 does not equal 1. So if they can just go ahead and get past this, and I think as the flight model is slower now, and as more ships come into it, it's going to be in their face because they can't get around the fact that it's going to become more and more difficult for people who have these large ships to use the tool of their choice, at least if their choice is stick or gamepad. And I have to say gamepad because a lot of times it is forgotten. And this is why I'm more for automation at this point in time, because that would be neutral to gamepad as well. Gamepad's like a mini stick, but it's because of the nature of it. It's
I've played so many driving games with the Xbox controller that it just comes naturally, like GTA.
yeah,
I can't drive with mouse and keyboard. It's impossible. However, we're probably all way over like half an hour here, so we should probably
true.
put a cut in this video, and then we'll probably. I'm sure you still have a bunch of other things to talk about.
Well, actually, no, I'm pretty close to the only thing. I was only one thing more I want to talk about, and that
Oh
was
well,
it.
maybe
And
we'll just make an extra long video then.
okay, well, I just wanted to get your opinion on you how you felt when you saw that they revealed the planetary the
Oh,
planets now
that's
being
right.
generated. I mean,
Um, I think that's a good way of doing it. From what little I remember, I mean, the problem is for me. I mean, I used to keep up on all this stuff, but it's just the information that comes out is either the same thing regurgitated over and over, and I honestly I just stopped caring.
10
Yeah,
repeat questions for the chairman. Yeah.
the same
Uh,
questions for the chairman over and over.
yeah.
I just like been so. I just want the game to come out, and I know you're
Yeah.
fighting really hard for controller stuff, and that's awesome, and I'll be here to support you. But it's kind of what I remember and what I've seen. It's I guess it's an okay idea, but it's just I don't remember like any of it. I mean, it's just
Oh,
like whoosh, whatever.
the whole trailer from Pupil to Planet.
Yeah, I
Uh,
mean that's all I remember is
yeah.
they showed it
That's all they
scrolling out,
showed.
and that's great, but that doesn't tell me anything. I
Well,
mean, I like
for
to
me,
dig into things, and
yeah. Oh, yeah.
that's just a picture to me.
Yeah, well, for me, that I mean, to me, it's great because it validates the fact that some vehicles have ground, some ships have ground vehicles, and it also brings exploration. Like, wow, we found a planet, we found a system. Let's land and let's actually
Oh
wander around here.
yes, that'll be an amazing aspect. Like if you look at like older games. Okay, here's a perfect example. Mass Effect 1. This is gonna be a long video, so sorry everybody for the longness. Mass Effect 1, I think, in my opinion, is one of the greatest RPG games ever made. Maybe up there in my top five. And the top five includes like Final Fantasy VI, Chrono Trigger. I mean, some really, really top-notch RPGs. But the thing with Mass Effect is when you went and landed on a planet, you had like this section. It was a pretty big section. It was mostly empty. You know, there was one or two random events, and there was like two or three little ore deposits you could go and grab. But they were all different and unique. But they were all like custom made. When you have an entire world that's basically just generated on the fly or from a file, basically, you can explore the entire planet. Will you want to? Maybe not, but it gives the possibility to go and look at all these things. And in Mass Effect 2, they crunched it down to a landing zone, and
Yeah,
then you had a base attached to it. So it was basically the same as everything else, except for it was quote unquote, as I do air quotes, on a planet. And you know, a lot of people didn't like the Mako, but I thought that was one of the best parts of Mass Effect 1. Maybe not the greatest part, but you had a sense of freedom and exploration in the game, and that was just a small box.
I,
Maybe it was like a couple
and
kilometers wide.
I guess that's why it's exciting for me. It's the idea of freedom. It's the idea that I can be on a same planet as somebody else, but we may not even ever bump into one another. We're not just all landing at the same port. Without the planets being planets, for the most part, it might as well just be a level wherever you land. It's just a pointless. I mean, not pointless, but it's just a zone, you know. And there's nothing beyond. Everything else is a bitmap skybox or something.
Which might be how they're going to do cities, but for the most part, that's fine because you're going to land on a city and you're going to be wanting in the port. You land at the city to repair the ship or buy weapons or buy ammo
Yeah,
or buy a ship. I mean, what are you going to? I mean, how many people explore Coruscant? I mean, it's 20 stories tall of just nothing but cities. You have key locations you go to. I'm gonna go to the Jedi Temple. I
yeah,
want to go to the freaking Senate. You know, there's places that have interest in something that's a very very large city.
yeah,
But maybe there's other aspects. Maybe there's one large city, and then the rest of the planet is more or less unexplored. Maybe it's a forest planet, so it's very hard to develop there, and there's still things to explore. That's something they could do. But
yeah.
for the most part, if it's just a big planet world, I don't really care. I mean, it's just a bunch of buildings.
Well, I agree, and that's why they've already said that Earth is going to be basically fixed locations because they don't want to try to generate the entire planet. And I think for
It'd be a
like
nightmare.
yeah, they're more remote locations. Like they may have one or two outposts. I can see them doing it because it makes a lot of sense to kind of just open that up. And they said with these planets would have random things on like hidden temples and things like that that they'll drop in, and some things will be procedurally generated that in the system that they're working on. So you may find a small town or a village or something that's out here in the middle of nowhere, and
And
that
you can run it over with your Mako.
exactly. So it's like, hey, welcome to our blah. There goes your reputation with the locals. No, but anyway, hope you guys all enjoyed our first line table discussion. I just don't know what to call it because there's only two of us, and we'll probably do more of these in the future as any sort of news develops or changes in the Star Citizen or whatever the heck else we feel like talking about, because we are into a variety of different games and there might be some crossover and things like that. So
And maybe
we'll
they won't all be like 45 minutes long or whatever.
they might be. I don't know. Okay, that's better. Some of the ones you listen to are like 2 or 3 hours long. So,
Oh man, I
I mean,
love the Roundtable podcast that oh man, I can't remember the Northern Lion and like Matheson do and stuff. I
yeah,
like listening to that in the background, but I listen to a lot of stuff in the background while I play games.
that's true. Yeah, I do too. I can't just do one thing. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us today, and as always, feel free to make comments or
Like,
respond.
comment, and subscribe. Give us
Uh,
more reviews.
I wasn't gonna say subscribe. I don't feel conceited enough to say subscribe. I just say leave comments. I figure if they like what we have to say, they'll subscribe. If not, then they'll just give us a big negative.
Yes, thumb down the video. We
Thumb
hate
down
you.
to yes, please don't thumb down the video. Hashtag you suck. No. Anyway, so anyway, guys, thanks again, and we'll talk to you. We'll see you next time.
Bye bye.